My name is Bresia Johnson. I'm the new executive director for UCLA Ventures and also program director for Bruin Founders. UCLA Ventures is a member-based donor community of investors and founders who are interested in supporting the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem at UCLA and are excited to give back to the founders on campus. We are starting a new mentor in residence program that will kick off at the end of May, beginning of June, called Bruin Founders, which is looking to service all aspiring innovators and entrepreneurs, hopefully spinning out more companies out of UCLA. So I'm excited to continue. Thank you.
Red means muted.
So I'm excited to continue the discussion today and welcome up our esteemed panelists here. We have Julie Sina, Azine, Catherine, Yola, and Madeline. You can all feel free to join us on stage here. And Julie Sina, who is the Associate Vice Chancellor of Alumni Affairs and the CFO for UCLA Foundation and UCLA Investment Company, will kick off our discussion and allow the panelists to introduce themselves a little bit further. So let's give them a round of applause as they come to the stage.
Wasn't that something? Oh my gosh. You know, there's so much to talk about, and we've got about 45 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time talking with the panel. I promise to save some time for questions, some interaction there, because, you know, I will tell you, when we had the opportunity to do a pre-meet a couple of days ago, I said to our panelists, we've got about a month of conversations here, so bear with us. There's a lot of stuff that we can talk about tonight, and we will, I guess I said, give time for questions and plus time for networking afterwards. So we're going to get to the movie in a minute or two, but one of the things that inspired me so much, and thank you for what you've done here, is just to hear the stories of the women and what inspired them. So in asking each of you to introduce yourself, what I'd appreciate it if you do this is, I don't know about you all, but when I was in kindergarten or first grade or whatever education that you were participating in, I don't remember telling somebody, when I grow up, I want to be the CFO or the CEO of an investment company. So what I'd love to hear from each of you is, think back and reflect on what was the first thing you remembered saying when somebody asked you that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then tell us just a little bit about the path and what you're doing right now. Now, I know that could take a week, so just think about some of those key tipping points and then what led to you what you're doing right now. So that first reflection of what you wanted to be, a little bit about your path, and where you're landed today in the moments that you're with us now. So, Catherine, how about if you start?
I just want to start with this before I answer that, and that is, this is so important to us. We're going on a 50-city tour around the world, and you're one of the stops. I think you're number 13.
Lucky number.
We just really would appreciate you pulling this out of your packet and doing the QR code over here in pink and taking a 2-minute survey that helps us know how the film impacted you, or doing the metrics. This will help us create change and make history. And if you could, so take 2 minutes of your life, and the first two to do it, our headquarters is checking that out. We'll be sending you some swag. Just as a little incentive, the first two. But we would love all of you to do it, just 2 minutes. And we really, really appreciate it. It makes all the difference, and it makes all of our efforts worthwhile, because what we want to do and the reason we're coming to engage with you in person is to absolutely change this scenario. So thanks for helping us to do that.
All right, Catherine, what did you first want to be when you, and then tell us a little bit about your path and where you're at today.
I think, honestly, I've always been a lover of film, so I think I have one on.
Are you on?
It's not on.
It's not on?
Or maybe click it higher.
It's probably just not on.
Or just pass the mic.
Yeah, we can pass the mic. I always have been interested in filmmaking. And so it's not the only thing I do, but it's something that I think, I just really believe that film and television is what changes culture. It changes and shapes it. Awareness creates change, right? And that's what films do. So I think I'm really doing what I've always loved and wanted to do. And
I know I'm really fortunate to do that. But I've just always been one of these people that said, I'm never going to do something I don't want to be doing. So I really love doing this, and I so appreciate you appreciating it. So yeah, mine's kind of boring. I'm doing what I wanted to do.
I think we just saw something pretty exciting that you did, so it's all good.
Okay, so hi there. I'm Mazine Redson Vanilla Bake. I wear many hats today. Whoop, whoop. Trish and I are UCLA MBA 1992. That's dating us, and I don't mind because age is wisdom.
That's right.
And wisdom is power, just like money is power. And let's see, I'm one of 3 female GPs at Emily Ventures. You saw us on screen. We got involved because, just like Catherine said, we understand we want to change the narrative around venture capital about getting women involved. Best way we all decided to change that narrative is to change media representation. And this documentary, I hope you all agree, with a shout out, please, Chair. This was amazing, wasn't it? Woo! Yeah, and Catherine is very humble today. She is a frickin' force of nature, people. She to get this project done. So we are really honored to be a part of it. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my money story. And you don't know this, and we've been on a lot of panels together. I'm going to go way back. In high school, I was president of the school, a student council. I had my best friend as treasurer. We put on this program during the summer, and this was in the days of cash. We put on this huge Battle of the Bands where we got cash from everyone. And I remember going to her house at the end of the night, and we had literally garbage bag fulls of cash. Of course we did. And I remember we were cracking ourselves up because we just sat in her room and just kept throwing the money above us and playing it. And I've been a capitalist ever since. And so it's really not surprising to me that if you go and see online our music video for this, the beautiful song, Show Her the Money, which Catherine can tell you more about, we have a great music video, and there's a lot of playing around with hundreds floating all over. So may they all be real, and may they all float into your lives as well.
So Azine, though, I'm going to ask you, have you always wanted to do this?
I don't know that, like you're saying, I don't know that I ever articulated that there was a job that was like this, but it occurred to me not long ago. This was the perfect bringing together of all my skill sets and interests, and this is exactly what I should be doing. It all manifested in a later stage.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline Darcy. I'm the founding partner of Ky Ventures. We're an early-stage investment firm that primarily focuses in healthcare, and with a special focus on overlooked demographics. So we tend to look at things like women's health, the care of older adults, the care of children. A lot of the things that I think this film brought up and discussed that I think as women investors, we have a different viewpoint and perspective on. Admittedly, I knew nothing about venture capital growing up. Both sides of my family immigrated to the States. My parents met when they were quite young, working on Domino's Pizza. Dawn's story really resonated in many ways. And I think I was really fortunate. I was on great scholarships. I went to incredible schools. But otherwise, I was one of 13 children in a low-income family. My mom was part of the Medicaid population. Truthfully, lucky not to know as a child that I was essentially on free lunch programs. I thought I was special in some way. But again, I think that's the miracle of being a child. I was also fortunate. I got into management consulting, which made me make more than my parents did in their entire careers in my first year out of undergrad. And so, again, I think there are so many of these opportunities that are quite life-changing in a way that we gain certain privileges. And I think I've always recognized that I want to give back in that way, gaining that knowledge and being in those rooms. My first job out of undergrad after, again, happenstance, I needed to work my way through college, so I worked at Apple and I worked at Disney. That nicely padded my resume to get a good job coming out. And I ended up in management consulting, working with a lot of Fortune 500s on M&A, so mergers and acquisitions. Largely, that was C-suite, working on corp dev, integrating these companies. I ended up going to Harvard for business school, and at that time I was like, oh, what can I actually use this skill set for? What can I do that is going to be really interesting? And truthfully, that was about, 7-8 years ago, and the stats haven't changed. I remember sitting there then saying, oh, only 2% of funding is going to women. What can we do to change that? We are still at the beginning. And I think there's a lot of excitement in that because it means there's so much upside and there's so much to do. but I still reflect that there is a long way for us to go. What I actually wanted to do when I was really young, for some reason, I thought it'd be really fun to have like a pet hotel. I was like very creative. So I'm like, I'm going to have a giant hotel. I'm going to have a cafe and like all these things.
Well, that's very entrepreneurial, so you started there.
Absolutely. And then I was like, ooh, hospitality, really hard. So that was a bit of my windy pathway as, no, maybe I'll still do it. Talk to me in 20 years.
Thank you.
Yep,
There you go,
it's
you're
working now. Good. I'm Yola Kirus. I'm with JP Morgan Private Bank. Let me borrow yours. Thank you. I'm with JP Morgan's private bank here in Beverly Hills, in Century City in Los Angeles. I work with high net worth and ultra high net worth families and family offices, and many of those are first generation, second, and third. And then I work very closely with our partners in other lines of businesses, our startup and innovation team. My colleague Sophia Nazarian is here, as well as my colleague in the private bank, Robbie Park, is here as well, the commercial bank, the corporate bank. And we are working to work with founders as well as entrepreneurs and GPs and LPs and family offices in various stages of their development, their growth. On the private bank side, specifically, we're working with the families, helping them prepare both their current and the next generation in terms of wealth transfer. As the film rightly pointed out, we are in the midst of one of the greatest wealth transfers in history. By 2045, the number is roughly about $75 trillion of dollars that will be passed from one generation to another. So it becomes incredibly important and imperative that we're preparing that generation to be good stewards of it and to make an impact. A little bit about my background. I did not know I was going to go into finance. Interestingly enough, I first wanted to become a doctor, and part of my desire for medicine and health was because at 6 years old, my family had traveled to Lebanon, and we were in the Lebanese Civil War. And so we escaped after 6 months, and I think that shaped my understanding of the world, and so health was always very important to me. But simultaneously, when we came back to the States, my mother took a job up in banking, and I really enjoyed watching her on Sunday nights, her and my father, balance their checkbook, and they would have their money talks. After my siblings and I would go to bed. And so I went to college thinking I'm on the pre-med track, that's what I'm gonna do. And then took a course in money and banking, and I loved it. And it was really due to a professor that inspired me, and then also seeing my mother work through the banking profession and really do well for herself and kind of lead the family in many respects in that way. And so I made a pivot. I then moved into banking, worked my way, and was very fortunate to have some male sponsors along the way, coach my career, sponsor me. I earned my licenses, built a book, and then had the opportunity to join JP Morgan in the private bank about 4 years ago and work exclusively with high net worth and ultra high net worth families. And it's been one of the most rewarding professions I could truly be in. It's a life calling, and I encourage anyone who's thinking, particularly women, of thinking of the wealth management and finance space to really get into it, because it's the sky's the limit. So.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing. And one of the things that we talked about when we met each other this week was, we want this to be as conversational as possible. So I've got a couple of things I'm going to put out there, and some that are threads from the conversation that we had. But as we discussed, I encourage you to jump in, to add, to question. It's all of us are facilitators here. We talked about that in the film, about the importance of how women network with one another. So we're going to continue doing that today. And so just starting with one question about the film, and as hard as it is, if you could choose one thing that resonated with you, and I know even as many times as you've seen it, Catherine, I would imagine every time something else pulls out for you, is what, if you had to pick just one, as hard as that might be, what's something that really resonated with you in terms of what you heard or what you saw? Anybody?
For me, it was really important that the film got across that there's not such a big barrier to entry as most people think. I think most people think you have to have $500,000 to invest in a venture capital fund, and I'm so glad that we broke that thought process and let people know that it's very accessible to way more people than you think. Did a lot of people feel that way? Yeah, okay, thanks. That was one of our goals.
Yeah, and thank you, Catherine, for mentioning that, because at Emmeline, we structured our Fund 1 right now is very deliberately structured so that we can, and I guess Nassim talked about it if you remember from the film, about allowing minimum investment checks that are attainable for accredited investors. And that is because we so firmly believe in the power of venture, both how it adds to innovation in our future building, how it changes behavior, and how it creates wealth for those who are involved. And if different types of people, if there's not good representation in this asset class, that means then so many people are left out of those important parts, particularly the wealth creation. So just, that's my little plug. And I would say my favorite part of my favorite 2 lines of this whole film are every time Dawn says, "I'm not gonna lie, I like the money."
And can I just do one follow-up?
Sure.
Just because when you talked about the asset class on the phone the other day, I think it'd be helpful for folks to hear your perspective around that, because, you all chose to go into this asset class.
We did.
I know in the film they talked about, other options that folks have that we all know about. But talk a little bit about that evolution and the impact on economy that you had mentioned.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back to you, Madam.
Thank you, and actually, it might tie into some stuff that Yola will talk about as well. But we've done the research, and the research is out there. If you look at the venture asset class, it has a disproportionately large effect on the economy, how it has contributed to the economy, to GDP, how it has contributed to innovation, how it has contributed to behavior change. Let's think about it, people. 10 years ago, would you ever thought that you'd take your phone and push a few buttons and get into a car with someone you did not know? I mean, I was taught as a kid, don't get into a car with a stranger, and I did today to get here. Or that you would find yes, it's true.
Stranger danger.
Stranger danger. And that you would so click and swipe and you would find your future spouse. Crazy, right? And so it's those impacts and then the wealth creation that I talked about. If you look at asset classes, this is one of many. And I'll say the top 3 are fixed income, public markets, and alternatives, which venture is a good portion. On average, over time, fixed income is delivered 2 to 3, right now maybe 5%. It's like slow and steady, low numbers. Public equities have delivered on average 10%. Not bad, you're outpacing inflation, which has typically run anywhere from 2 to 5. So you're doing a little bit better. In neither instance are you building wealth. Until you get to venture, which has delivered 20% returns on average, that's where you build wealth. So if you're not involved in this asset class, this is where the impact is. You have to get involved in it.
But I think you talked about the potential for impact for women, particularly.
And
because of the
particularly,
demographic.
thank you, yeah. And I'll bring the point home in that women, 15% of us are involved as GPs, as decision makers, to where you invest. 2%, a little bit less, are involved as the founders who are receiving funds. And on the investor LP side, 20% approximately are involved as investors. We're woefully underrepresented in this asset class. And that's to our detriment. It means we're not creating solutions that benefit us, and we're not creating wealth for us. And it's time to change.
Feeling we'll be coming back to that, right? Takeaway for you, something that really resonated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me it was seeing the impact of this asset class, and truthfully also debunking really terms, right?
Yeah.
LPs, limited partners, GPs, general
Founders,
partners.
angels.
Exactly, and how that ecosystem fits together. Because truthfully, venture is actually quite a small asset class in the scheme of things, but it has an outsized impact when you look at culture, when you look at GDP, when you look at employment. And again, there are stats there around too. Women CEOs are more likely to hire women. And really, you look at other economies around the world. I was thinking about this the other day. Look at places like Japan. Actually, they haven't included women in their workforce, and their GDP is suffering because of that. And so, these are very much, again, really global macroeconomic trends that start by investing early stage in venture capital. So it really is having that long-term mindset of what we do today is what's going to shape the next 10 to 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important. I'm sure your work really touches upon this. It's thinking really long-term about what is the impact of our capital. And I think that's quite special in the way that different people can be involved, right? I'm sure in your work it's talking to families who are thinking about legacy, thinking about next generation. I know in many of the cases of my peers, we've grown up in really very much of a tech era, and some of the things that we have seen in technology are shaping the ways that perhaps we invest versus the way that our parents or grandparents invested. And I think being involved in venture, whether you're an LP or a GP, and now we all know these terms because of the film, allows you to be part of that. And I think above and beyond the financial returns, which are lucrative, there is some really large impact that can be made from a personal level of how you can shape the world.
Well said.
Yeah, very well said. And I think just a theme that I've seen kind of permeate through the film in its entirety is this idea of network accessibility and the importance of developing and fostering a network, which intuitively women do and have that skill. And then the second piece is the persistence, and that can't be underscored enough, and it's driven by that grit. The combination of the two, the ability to be able to withstand the ups and the downs of the business cycle, the ability to meet with diverse stakeholders, whether it's the LPs or the GPs, and be outside of the comfort zone to be able to pitch. On the family well side, the family office side, it's helping to coach the families so that the children and the next generation are able to have the money talk and feel comfortable and in tune with what that wealth means and what values they want to represent with that, and also be mindful and have the financial wherewithal to understand how to invest when they look at opportunities, because many of them are presented with different opportunities. For the GPs and for the LPs, because we also do bank those within JP Morgan's ecosystem, and particularly as well within the private bank, we actually bank the partners themselves. It's also helping to deliver that network and that access to founders that may be in different parts of the channel of the firm, as well as make introductions to family offices, establish ways where there could be direct deal access and flow, co-investment opportunities. One thing that we do, and we've done exceptionally well, is we have an AI platform. Think of it as Match.com for GPs, LPs, and founders and family offices, institutional investors, where they can come together, look at deals, source deals together, and network with AI-powered platform. One of many different solutions that are offered through the firm, but it goes back to awareness and education and that persistence and that ability to just hustle.
Well, Yola, one of the things that you mentioned that I'd love for you to talk a little bit about is, again, the intentionality of the place that we're in LA and some of the unique challenges specific to women founders in this space. So if you wouldn't mind putting that out there, and you all are welcome to weigh in as well.
Sure, happy. So I think with women founders in particular, it's, a lot of it is, I'm going to go down just from one thing that we can all manage and control is mindset and the perception that there are barriers. And there are, legitimately so, but I think some of that may also be just we need to lean in a little bit more into creating those networks and putting ourselves out there and fostering and being part of communities that UCLA, the Accelerator, Emmeline, Techstars, even JP Morgan are facilitating. It's also looking at different industries. One of the things I've said before previously when we were talking is that to some extent capital is, and this may not be the best word, but it's the only word that I can come up with right now, is somewhat blind in the sense that capital is going to chase the opportunity that has a good ROI on it, right? Generally speaking, and so what that means is that looking at different industries right now where we're seeing capital flow into, and really encouraging women to lean into some of those industries. So what does that mean? Security tech is huge. I was at a security tech conference with founders recently, and I can tell you it was lots of men, but very few women, and women just thrive, have a natural skill set and that ability. Cyber, clean tech, to name a few, blockchain. There are so many worlds and different sectors that capital is flowing to, and it would be wonderful to start seeing women really leverage that talent and be there as well.
I think one solution to that is that one of the things that came out of making the film that we didn't necessarily see, I mean, I've always thought that universities would be a great place, but we had no idea just how great universities were going to be for the film, so much so that they've asked us to put together a curriculum to go with it.
Right.
And it's just mind-boggling to me that universities as prominent as this one and many others don't have a program about learning about venture capital. And so now young women are going to be able to learn about this at an early age so that they understand they can go into venture capital. And then we will see more women in venture capital and working their way up the ranks to actually being the decision makers in venture capital, which they currently are not, as well as encouraging them to think about investing in venture capital in their future. And so, wow, is that going to be a game changer, right? When we're in every university teaching this at that age. And not just to women, of course, to young men as well, who, I want to say, it has been such a wonderful surprise in doing our screenings, and I see so many men in the audience today, that they have been such huge champions because they have said to us, wow, we didn't know there was such a disparity. That's not okay with us. We want our daughters and our sisters.
But Catherine, I do want to, the thing that's interesting to me when you say that,
Yeah.
apologize for interrupting, but I warned you.
That's okay.
Is one of the things that we've talked about is, I'm a little surprised to hear that, given we've observed that when you go into the room, there's still that gender imbalance there.
But that's only men in that venture capital
Okay,
space.
okay, thank you.
So all of the ones, which is probably 95% that are not in that space, really don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they step into this room and learn about venture capital, they're saying, A, hey, this could be a great asset class I haven't
Mm-hmm.
invested in. And B, like I started to say, was that they want better for their daughters
Yeah.
and their sisters and their wives and their mothers. And I guarantee you, they all have mothers.
I know Azine, and then we have Madeline. And if I could make a request, though, in the movie I noticed, you've got a couple of school across town T-shirts. Can I get you some UCLA T-shirts for the next film?
I want one. Yeah. So 2 points that I actually think are related. So Catherine was talking about, and thinking about the men who have daughters and wives and sisters. And from Emmeline's point of view, and a lot of data will support this as well, and particularly in philanthropy, and we want to take that research and add it to investment. When you support her, when you invest in her, yes, you benefit and accelerate her lived experience, and that means that everyone in her family and all of her community, their ships will also rise. So we think of it as not just elevating her, but really it's investing in everyone for everyone's betterment. And I want to add that. And then I'm going to challenge, because something you said, Yolo, it's really about the efficiency of capital markets, right? And that it will flow to where the money-making opportunity is. In many respects, I believe that. And in the specific case that we've been working at Emmeline, where we invest in sectors that support her overall health, like Ky Venture does as well, and we're only investing in female founders, and I only say that to you because it should be obvious. It's my familiarity bias. A white guy from Harvard doesn't tell you that he's investing only in white guys. It's just what you do because you invest in what you know. Data over and over again show that investing in women delivers, regardless of asset class, she will deliver about a 30% better ROI. So if capital were truly efficient, there should be way more going to females, and it's not. And so that's why I'm like, in many instances, yes, but I'm not seeing, there's a disconnect here that I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, my experience having worked in venture capital from an unpaid intern through to a general partner is that people invest in what they know and what excites them. And when you think about TAM, the addressable market, the size of an opportunity, that can have bias to it, right? We think it doesn't have bias because we can put a number on it, but who creates that number? We do, right? We sit there and we look at a pitch deck and we look at a model and we look bottoms up or top down, however you'd like to calculate it. But there's a reason why, when you think about Uber, what was the market for black cars? And what is the value of Uber today, right? You cannot have seen that. Another example, Airbnb. Again, staying in random people's homes, sleeping on the couch. These were things that people shaped as market makers, right? And in venture capital, that's something you can do in terms of this category creation. It's something that's exciting. And yet you have areas like women's health, and it's like, ooh, it's niche. It's like, oh, that's interesting. It's 50% of the population driving 80% of spend in a $4 trillion market. Not sure. But again, it's these... Exactly. But it's these areas where, again, we have to be realistic that we are thinking as venture capitalists around TAM. The same thing could be true of others. And so, again, it's just understanding how things work. And in the same way, truthfully, in going through the job process and career process of being in venture capital, I blind applied for my jobs. Like, I was really silly. Like, coming from an immigrant background, I was like, you don't network. Like, that's not meritocracy. You just have to submit a resume and, like, hope it goes well. Anything else is cheating. Like, that was so naive and so silly. But again, like, I got my first jobs that way. That's how I got into Apple. That's how I got into a job at Disney. That's how I got into management consulting. That's how I got into HBS, which is crazy. But getting a first job in venture does not work that way. And I think that we have to be honest and real that this is a very network-driven industry, right? We send each other deals. We look to each other for referrals. And I think that, again, that is different, right, than just the education alone. It's very network and relationship-based.
So I want to put one other question out there because I thought it was an interesting, also another topic we got into on our call, and then we'll open it up for questions. So one of the things we talked about is, and I'd love for somebody to jump in and speak to, is what's the role of governance and policy in this space? And when we think about that in terms of our traditional leadership styles around gender, communication, et cetera, talk a little bit to that, if somebody would be willing to do that.
Well, California just passed a policy to help have accountability in this space. It never existed before. Now they have to be accountable to where the money's going. Let's not forget that a lot of government money goes into into venture capital funds. Hello, 50% of that comes from women, right? And so it should be accountable where that's going to and making sure it's being dispersed the way it needs to be fairly. And so that could be done on a national level as well. And then I think the other thing we talked about was that other countries right now are changing, they're moving the goalposts. So in the UK, they're talking about changing what it means to be an accredited investor quite significantly, trying to shut out more people. And believe me, it's being talked about here. We have an investor in the film that sits on the board of the SEC, and it's being talked about here too. We don't want that. We want more people to have access to investing in venture capital, not less. So yeah, it can't just be the Billionaires Boys Club. It needs to be more balanced. And so one of the things that you can do is start investing in venture capital, especially while that is in place, and then make sure that you're very cognizant of voting for and getting behind policymakers that are going to keep it there so you can participate, if that makes sense.
Zina's ready to jump in. I see that.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. No, these are all great points, and you ended where I wanted to continue with the idea. So I'm a little bit of an anti-policy girl. I think it's great, and I'm glad that California has instituted this more exposure and transparency as to where venture invests. It's great. Is that going to really push things? Probably not, in my point of view. So where I'm coming out with this is encouraging more people to get involved as investors. And there is an opportunity that was talked about, that we've talked about already, with this huge transfer of wealth coming into women's hands. And for me, that is the opportunity that is even greater than policy change. That is an opportunity to say, we hold the power, and we will use it effectively to make the change that we want to see. And I really am excited for this opportunity that is coming to us.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think policy, I kind of take a similar stance, Emmeline, in a sense that I look at policy as it has to be smart policy. It can't be just policy for policy's sake and because it just sounds great and it's expedient for the moment. Because their history is replete of instances where policy started off with the best of intentions, but down the road there were disparate impacts created as a result of it. And that's what we don't want to have happen. But when there's thoughtful and smart policy, and there's long-term study effects of what that policy would entail and the impact, I think that's worth looking into. What I will say is, to your point, I 100% agree. I think we have more of an opportunity to really drive change at the micro level, which is also where I was coming up from the fact that capital could be blind, but from the micro lens level, in the sense that what we're doing here right now, creating the awareness, being part of the accelerator group, being a part of the JP Morgan or Techstars, UCLA's venture accelerators, all of this bringing in education with private industry, as well as the community and public makers to be able to drive change and drive awareness and facilitate network and access, I think is far more impactful in the short term and will have that impact down the road.
All righty, so we've got a couple minutes
Julie?
for questions. Oh, sorry.
Before we go to questions, real quick, because I see 2 of the 4, and I just want to make sure that we take a moment of recognition of the brilliance that you have at UCLA with the Accelerator program. It is a rock star program that is taking innovation across campus and giving it a platform to nurture and flourish and to really come out in a big way with solutions that will benefit us all. And is it surprising or unsurprising to you that it is led by 4 women? So, whoop. And thank you so much for bringing this opportunity.
Well, and I think just to add to that is that, one of the things I appreciate about that is that we're doing it in partnership, because that's how we work as women. So, question, who'd like to ask the first question? Yes, we've got a microphone coming, I think. I can repeat the question too if we need to.
So my situation is I just graduated last year with my MBA from Anderson, so I'm a Bruin. Bless, thank you. And I also went through actually the UCLA Accelerator. So Trish and Claire and Fallon and Beatina have been amazing just support. So my goal is I'm a founder, I'm building a B2B SaaS company, and we're looking at, risk, and we're looking at, a company's likelihood that they're going to be sued by their employees for like discrimination or harassment or all these different things. But as I'm building a startup that's going to push organizational change through technology, I also want to be an investor. I want to, support, other founders of mine. I want to, start contributing to my peer group right now. So do I need to wait to be an accredited investor, or do I need to wait to be very successful with my startup, or is there a way I can support now?
Jump in.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. That's a great question. Thank you. So the question is, I think everyone heard, how can she get involved in the venture ecosystem without being an investor yet, of an accredited investor? And that's wonderful. I'll give you like a few top of mind ideas. One is there's actually many ways that you can invest without being an accredited investor. So there's crowd funding, there's Backstage Capital. Arlen Hamilton has a great program. There's an opportunity, actually some funds, we are not one, I don't know if you are, there's actually a few slots open for non-accredited investors in certain funds. They might not tell you about that. But there's an opportunity to make connections. There's an opportunity to volunteer. There's an opportunity to do pitch deck reviews for others. There's so many ways that you can get involved with your thoughtfulness and your time that's very valuable. You're welcome.
Great question, thank you. Next question? Yes, down front. So my question is, here, I'll help you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. My question is around funding. So a lot of VCs, especially like women emerging managers, you start out with a $10 million fund. That's kind of the standard, because that's how it goes. Most of the capital sits up here, and you end up sometimes needing to go upstream to institutional capital, to family offices, et cetera, et cetera. So the dichotomy that I see is you want to have more individual investors come in, and we definitely need it. I'm a huge advocate. I'm like there with you. And yet for you to have a paycheck and survive, because 2% of 10 million is 200,000, you can't run a fund and a life, especially not if you live in a big city. So you're like, this is more of a statement maybe, but also for you to speak to, because it's so hard to be a fund manager when you want more people to get involved, and yet you actually need the capital from up here, and splitting that time and trying to make it work is so hard. And I just want to commend you all, because I know how hard that is. And if you want to speak to that and how you think about that, how can we get more women and more people, men to everybody, the individual investor, and to allow you to go to Fund 2, Fund 3, and take us with you?
Yeah, I mean, love to hear it.
You'll see.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it goes to show that many of us who are building firms are not doing this as a get-rich-quick business. It's a very get-rich-slow business and don't make any money for a few years type of business. But it is incredibly important and wealth generating over time for our limited partners, as well as hopefully for all of the women GPs building firms. I want to underscore, I also co-chair the SteerCo of All Raise, which is an organization that supports both female founders and funders, non-binary investors as well. And I think what we find is, again, women actually have no trouble, just as you see them very equally represented in university, getting a first job in venture now. It's actually getting much better at the junior levels, but they're not getting to partner. And when we saw a lot of the economic shock post-2021 and the funding craze, it's often the diversity that was lost in that is sadly first out, which I think is why it's important that women are starting their own firms. To your point on starting small and growing.
Can I ask you a follow-up, though? Did I understand you say women are not getting to partner?
No, I mean, not in the same pace and not at the same scale as we followed the data. I mean, you could understand.
I know, I just wanted you to say that.
And again, it's...
Actually, can you articulate why you think it is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Azine.
I mean, so think about the structure of a venture firm. You have a management company that controls each fund, and you have general partners in the fund, which have something called carried interest, which is your earnings or profit from the returns of the fund. That's really valuable. People who have resources don't tend to love to give up resources when they don't find it necessary. And so it's a really high bar to become a general partner, to become part of that profit share. And again, if someone doesn't perhaps think like you, look like you, value your perspectives in the same way, it's much harder to get there. And truthfully, if you're an investor who sits there being able to perhaps not make the investments that you want to make year after year, or not get the promotion that you know that you deserve year after year, you likely leave, right? And so that's what we often see. There are very few spots, as you think. It's like, again, a triangle, pyramid. There are very few spots at the top. And so, yeah, exactly. I'm very used to up and out models, apparently. I love them. But to your point about growing over time, you have to actually think about the allocators, right? In much of the world and the narratives we think about VCs and entrepreneurs, VCs are fairly villainized. It's not portrayed fairly well, right? But a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize that we have limited partners. We have a fiduciary duty to our investors who we are looking to make money for, right, in our 10-year fund life. And so it will take us being able to return these funds really well, right? But it also takes institutional investors to start to look at what they can do through emerging manager programs. A $20 million check is too big for a $50 million fund. How can we think about different fund of funds and vehicles in the institutional space that might be more appropriate? For women leading family offices, how can we get them to use staff dollars to invest in funds? How can we get women out of just doing philanthropy into doing investments, right? And I think that is what we need to start to shape, right? It's allocators who move large portions of capitals to asset classes like venture, which are going to make a huge impact. And so truthfully, as much as I would also love to see more women starting firms and more women in GP seats, I want to see more women as allocators. I want to see more women LPs.
Me too.
Yola?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Seeing more women as allocators, and what does that mean? So let's take, for example, the institutional or the high net worth space. We have programs in place for emerging family leaders. So that next generation of male and female, second, third generation that's going to take over the capital, they're prepared, they're educated, they understand how to look at deals, how to align family capital with what the family values and the philanthropic mission of whatever entity that they're going to be managing. That's one aspect per se. Within our innovation economy team as well, that works specifically with founders that are pre-seed and seed and Series A. It's that opportunity to get in there, advise them, bring them, and network them with the appropriate types of LPs and GPs and institutional partners early on, giving them advice and guidance on how to scale. And as their business needs evolve and they need to access capital or they need to access the treasury markets, it's making sure that they have those resources and so that there's a firm that's growing with them through all their various life stages, business cycle stages. And then, I think something that touches upon the policy piece that was a little earlier, I think it's important to have and make sure that there's on investment committees, there's more representation of diverse and women. Because again, that's going to be part of those people that are making these allocations.
Is he a quick comment? Because I think we have another question.
Yeah, I'm going to drop some knowledge. To Madeline's point about what it's like to be a GP or to work in venture capital, there's a great book that came out last year or 2 years ago called Alpha Girls. So it's really, really good. You should read that. And you should also, into the sense of like getting involved, read the book by Tara Moore, Playing Big. And Catherine has something.
Was there a question here? Okay, let's go to the question if we could.
Thank you all for being here and doing what you do. As a founder, I'm just going to assume that everyone's inbox is constantly flooded with deal flow. And so what advice do you have for founders who want to talk to investors, even if it's just about advice or future funding? Like, what is your favorite way to get connected with deal flow and founders who are working on really cool things?
Then here, I'll be quick and then hand it over. So my favorite way is we very specifically on our website have a submit button for founders to submit their pitch deck, their information. We've set that up specifically so that you don't get lost, so that you're in the system. And that's how I'd prefer to receive any of that. And we have set up a monthly founder circle that it's for all founders, not only those that are in our portfolios, that each month have a different topic of discussion that are really to help you. So those are my two preferred ways. And then also remember, as you get to, after this, the founders are going to want to come up and talk to us, right? Don't tell me right away what your business is. It's a long-term game, people. Just start to get to know us.
That's great advice.
I would say take advantage of any mentorship and advice type of programming. So I remember when I was doing my MBA, there were venture capitalists that had office hours. Those are really lovely, low-stakes ways to start building relationships. And so whether it's through something like Pledge LA or a nonprofit or something that UCLA is doing, there are ways that venture capitalists often are volunteering their time. There are also many accelerator communities that do the exact same thing. So finding those groups where truthfully you have access, and it's a friendly room, right? You are literally there with people who are giving their time because they want to help. So I'd say that is one way where it's like you're truthfully getting advice. Second is like ask for advice before asking for capital, because truthfully you learn what that venture capitalist is looking for, how you can improve your pitch over time. And that again is very much relationship building. In terms of the way that I like to receive deals, truthfully, my founders in my portfolio are my best source of deal flow because founder communities, as you know, are really tight. And truthfully, the founders that I've invested in also tend to know what we invest in and at what period of time and in what check size. And so to me, that's usually my best inbound versus even other investors. And so truthfully, I would really leverage the founder community and say, hey, this is where we're at. This is what we're building. Do any of your investors invest in this type of thing? Because that will just make it much tighter of a fit than kind of getting into I'm trying to research and get into this black box of someone's inbox, because you're right.
I'm going to bring this to close a little bit, or you can make your last comment.
Because I know this is important to founders. And to Madeline's point, we all have websites where we very clearly lay out what our investment thesis is, like how we invest, what we invest in, what stage. So please take a moment to look at those and even understand, do you fit thesis? And by the way, also take a step back and think about, am I actually a venture backable idea?
I get a lot of pitches for Mr. Darcy for random fintech companies in Africa. I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's really great feedback as well. So I want to bring this to a close so that you've got time to do the networking with our fabulous panelists. And I want to do so by just throwing one quick question out to you so we can close with that. Okay. And that is one actionable step that we can leave this room with to open up the community to women.
Well, first of all, the QR code. 2 minutes will make
Can we
such a
put that back up
difference.
on the screen, the QR code?
I don't know if you'll have it, but you have it in your packet.
Yeah, it's going to be up here in a minute.
Showherthemoneymovie.com. Join us so that you can follow our path. We've got a long path ahead of us, not just doing in-person, but also eventually we'll be doing pay-per-view streaming that you could help us to get out there. We have a resources page so you can connect with venture capital firms. You can find out about workshops, communities, books and podcasts, everything. In fact, I have the podcast, as you know, Invest in Her, free, complimentary resources. We have them on the site. So showherthemoneymovie.com. If you could post that on your Instagram and tag us, Instagram Show Her the Money, on LinkedIn, I'm there, Catherine Gray, and would love to connect with you and have you share us with all your friends around the country and around the world. This is a movement. Please join it and help us to make this change. It's going to be fun.
Azine, actionable step.
So I have ask of 1A is start talking about investing with a group of friends. Just like you have book clubs, you have drinking clubs, bunko clubs, I don't know what you do, but normalize the conversation to talk about investing in money. And this is particularly to the women out there, but I think men even can use this advice. So that's 1A. 1B is, if you're an accredited investor, then start exploring how you can invest in this asset class. There's lots of opportunities to do it, and you should get involved. And if you're not an accredited investor, as we talked about at the beginning, find other ways to get involved through with your time.
Alan?
Yeah, I quite agree. I mean, I would absolutely say if you're an accredited investor, if there is any sector, ask women emerging managers. It's a really small community, for better or for worse. So if you want to do a fintech fund, a climate fund, whatever it is, I guarantee one of us will know a woman fund building in that space. And they love value-add LPs. It truthfully, I very much feel like we are founders in and of ourselves, right? Even though we support founders. And so, absolutely. And so again, just asking, because truthfully, I think we ought to ask more, but also if you ask a fund, they are going to be thrilled. And then I would say we really need more men in this space would be the second part. Again, when you look at today, we can't have separate spaces. As much as I will absolutely say, I want to see more women-led funds and I want to see more women investing, I want to see more men involved in this as well. And again, being part of All Raise, we talk about this a lot. We are in an industry that is largely male-dominated, and we need to do more together. And so that is a general theme, whether it's nonprofit partnerships with private foundations, whatever that is, just more inclusiveness as an ecosystem as it relates to venture and tech.
UCLA Venture.
Plug.
Yeah.
So just to echo what my fellow panelists have said, the importance of being an ally, whether it's male, female, BIPOC, LGBTQIA, just be an ally to another. The second is, in the packet, there are some fantastic resources, and I would encourage everyone to just take a look at those and leverage them, and don't miss that opportunity to get involved in the networks that are provided in the packet as well. Third is, JP Morgan Chase, really proud of the firm. I know I've mentioned it several times here, but it is a firm that is very dedicated and supportive to both the innovator economy as well as the LP and GP. So please reach out to my colleagues Sophia and Robbie Park, who are here, and just learn a little bit more, learn a little bit more about what we can do to support you. And then the third piece as well is all these events. Just find someone, ask for advice, and ask for an opportunity to meet and to network. The worst that someone can say is, I'm sorry, I can't help you now, but you know what? You've made an ask, you've built the confidence, and you've stepped in and you've leaned in.
Or they may know somebody who can.
That's right.
So I think part of the message here is to continue doing and showing up like we are tonight. To open those doors, to have the conversations, to be a little fearless. I think that came out in your film. And thank you, Catherine, for the narrative that we will embrace and continue. Thank you so much for the possibility, and let's go network.
Thank you. We wanted to, really quick, we want to thank the education, the experience, the insight of these 5 women tonight that are on the stage. We're amazing with your time and generosity. And Julie, in her own right, manages over $1 billion for UCLA. So we're just saying, 5 billion. Sorry, my numbers are off. 5 billion, so very...
The B word, that's good.
Billion, money. So very humble, very inspiring. UCLA, #1 public university. This room tonight also shows what we're all about here, which is inclusivity and diversity. There are 5 entrepreneurship hubs across the campus. Tonight we're in the home of Nikki Lynn of CNSI. She's the director of the Magnify Accelerator that brings us tech, nanotechnology. You can blow things up in her space, super fun. But we all do work inclusively across campus, and it is a team effort. I know Rod said it, but Matt, who showed late, Julie, Rod, tonight they are launching the UCLA Alumni Angel Network. Why we are here is to increase the wealth of all of us and UCLA and continue to be the #1 public university. With that, margaritas, food, enjoyment. Alan, thank you for the sponsorship. JP Morgan, thank you for the sponsorship. Ladies being here, let's go party.